Snezhnaya is far and away the most hyped nation Genshin's ever had, and for good reason. It's where a lot of the prime movers of the main plot, like the Fatui and the Gnosis, come from, and we are so close to learning more about these things. And yet, I feel like the most unexpected yet pressing question on everyone's mind right now is actually, what the heck's wrong with Paimon in the teaser trailer? She looks sick, cold, and tired, and none of those are Paimon traits. Paimon is bubbly and full of energy and always floating around, so it feels really weird to see her just sitting there. In fact, I don't think this has ever happened before. So it's definitely a topic worth pursuing. Now, I have my own ideas on what might be wrong with Paimon, and I've shared my musings on stream once or twice, but not everyone watches those, and I've also had a little time to sit and stew in my own thought juices, so I thought now would be a good time to sort of compile all of those thoughts into something a bit more cohesive. And also accessible, because no one wants to scroll through like a 4-hour stream to find like the thoughts about this one little thing, you know? But I digress. If we want to learn more about what's going on with Paimon, we need to start off this little mini theory by talking about the element of cryo. Because not only is it relevant to what's up with Paimon, but it's also going to be the big focus of the upcoming region of Snezhnaya. That is undeniable, because not only is cryo going to be able to reshape the landscape in Snezhnaya, but we're also going to be getting some new stellar reactions for it. And you'll be able to test out those stellar reactions using Sandrone. Although you might be feeling a bit light on the Primo Gems needed to get her, but never fear, cause Eneba is here to both sponsor today's video and offer you some great deals on in-game top-ups, game keys, and more. But of course, by deals, I don't mean inconsistent discounts like other top-up shops use. Instead, Eneba offers cash back on every purchase, and you can use that cash back to buy new game keys, software, or even gift cards. Or you can just roll it into your next Genshin top-up. I don't know what you need, but I do know that Eneba has more than enough options for you to choose from. But in a scenario where you decide to get yourself some freshly baked Primo Gems, you can rest easy knowing that Eneba offers a reliable and TOS-compliant service that keeps your account safe and secure. All you gotta do is select the top-up pack you want, enter your UID and server region, then double-check your purchase region over here before you click checkout. This drop-down needs to match your current location, or at least whatever it thinks your current location is. Once that's done, you only need to fill out your payment information and your purchase will appear in your account in a matter of minutes, and the cash back will appear instantly. So whether you're looking to pick up Sandrone or you just want to prepare for all of the cool upcoming characters we're gonna meet in Snezhnaya, Eneba's got you covered. Use the link in the description box to check it out for yourself. I would like to extend a huge thank you to Eneba for sponsoring this video, but alas, I must bid them adieu because I have a theory to share. Now, what was I talking about before this? Oh, right. We were talking about why I think Paimon is weak to cryo, or at least a certain phenomenon related to cryo. Let me explain. In the To Snezhnaya and the Future behind the scenes video, the developers mentioned that cryo has some unique properties, and they kind of gave us some ideas as to what those could be, but refused to elaborate further, which probably means it's important. Now, based on what they shared, we can reasonably assume that the special property of cryo is tied to the preservation of both energy and memories, which makes sense because real-world scientists can extract perfectly preserved ancient specimens from ice sheets and other frozen things. In these cases, ice functions like amber, totally encapsulating a specimen so it cannot be eroded by the passage of time. Now, we've seen Genshin reference this a couple of times in places like Dragonspine and during Xiangling's story quest, wherein ancient boars were perfectly preserved, and also still alive, inside blocks of ice. Oh, and there was a person too. Remember when 4 Stars had story quests? Boy, that sure was something, wasn't it? Now, to be clear, it's not the ice that's actually preserving things, because ice is just water that's really cold. And water does not have this preservation property. So temperature is actually playing a larger role in the preservation of whatever you have. So for that reason, I'd like to argue that the element of cryo actually has nothing to do with ice, and everything to do with the slowing of kinetic energy, or a reduction of thermal energy, however you want to slice it. So when we talk about kinetic energy, we're talking about movement. And when we talk about thermal energy, we're really talking about the movement of the individual particles that make up a chunk of matter. The faster those individual particles vibrate or move, the hotter something is, and the more thermal energy it has. But the less those particles vibrate and move, the less thermal energy it has, and the colder that chunk of matter they belong to gets. And when you stop something from moving or vibrating, you can effectively freeze it in time. Now, this is just a lot of words to say that cryo is a form of stasis, and stasis is a function of both space and time because movement is defined by both, and the particles that make up matter move. As my physicist buddy once said, time is the way we measure changes in space, so if nothing is moving, time becomes imperceptible. So by this logic, low thermal energy slows down the erosion of time, while high thermal energy speeds up the erosion of time. This is why we preserve food in the fridge and break down food on the stove. And I think that Snezhnaya is like a region that got placed in Teyvat's freezer in order to slow down its passage of time. Think of the nation as being put in cryostasis, at least in part. After all, we do know that when someone gets cryo applied to them in-game, they go slower, so that's already a function of the element. And I probably could have just led with that, but you know. But the real question here is, why is Snezhnaya in the freezer? Why are they trying to slow down time? Well, the Belyet Tsar died during the Conrian Cataclysm 500 years ago after allegedly opening the gates to Pohola, which is most likely a portal to the Abyss. And that wasn't even the first time he'd tried to do that. According to Hymns of the Far North, he convinced the Third Descender to do it once before as well, and that got the Third Descender killed and then chopped up and made into Gnosis. That's part of the reason why the Third Descender goes by the name Saaralainen, which is another name for Lemminkainen, a hero from the Finnish epic Kalevala, because he also went to Pohola, which is an Arctic realm of the dead from Finnish folklore, and he got chopped up and thrown into the River of Death as a result of his transgressions. Fun times. Now we know that the Heavenly Principle hates when people mess with abyssal stuff, and they've used their celestial nails to obliterate entire nations as punishment for even attempting to mess with the Abyss. Which begs the question as to why Snezhnaya is still standing, because I don't think it's supposed to be. I think the power of cryo is trying to slow down time in order to prevent an inevitable disaster. Remember, we saw Child in the teaser trailer asking how long Snezhnaya had left, implying that there's a great unavoidable disaster that they're trying to stop. And that is allegedly what Project Stuja is for. And Stuja just means snowy, like the blizzard kind of snowy, which implies a lot of colds going around. So whatever the plan is must be related to cold, or perhaps cold's stasis properties. So what I'm wondering is whether or not there's like celestial nails hovering over Snezhnaya that were once sent down as punishment for opening the gates to the Abyss by the Heavenly Principles, and the Tsar at one point was able to create some kind of stasis field around his nation. Now, as I was recording this, the big hyped Snezhnaya teaser trailer finally dropped. And there's a lot to talk about in it, but the one thing I want to highlight in this video is that there's a scene where they talk about voting to extend Project Stuja, which means that as of right now, Project Stuja is already in effect. So the idea that Project Stuja is actually a cryostasis field around Snezhnaya seems a little bit more probable. Now, this wouldn't stop the nails forever, but it would at least buy the nation a lot of time, which might be running out. But this video is not about Project Stuja, it's about Paimon, and all of this was merely preamble to make the case that Paimon might be weak to the cold. And by that I mean she's weak to the space-time anomaly that's being caused by the cold. What makes this feel plausible to me is that the last time Paimon got really exhausted like this against her will to the point where she passed out and felt ill was all the way back when we were tackling a space-time anomaly in the depths of the chasm. Now, this space-time anomaly made it feel like time was passing inconsistently for each person. And of all the people in our party, Paimon was the one who had the most extreme reaction to it. While the Traveler felt like only a day or so had passed down there, Paimon was convinced that they'd been down there for months, or like 20 days at the very least. And that's a massive discrepancy. And a short while after realizing all of this, she started to feel kind of sick and then fell into a really deep sleep. Now, you absolutely can make arguments against this event's relevancy, but I feel like we shouldn't dismiss it entirely because Paimon, for all her flaws, is very resilient, and it's very rare that some physical phenomenon messes with her. Being in areas with dense toxic levels of elemental energy or direct abyssal exposure never seems to impact her. Heck, even instances where Nahida was struggling didn't affect Paimon. So I think it's very interesting that the space-time anomalies in the chasm did have an impact on her, and that's why I think it's very possible that Snezhnaya as a nation is experiencing a similar space-time anomaly that stems from Cryo's ability to put things in a sort of stasis. But the chasm isn't the only space-time anomaly or weird space-time thing that we've encountered, right? Like, they had to travel through some chaotic space-time thingy in A's second story quest, just to bring up an example where she didn't experience any negative effects. But the key metric here may not be the space-time anomaly's existence, but instead the duration of Paimon's exposure to the space-time anomaly. Because it did take a while for the chasm spacetime anomalies to wear Paimon down. So it's very possible that Paimon doesn't experience these symptoms immediately. So she wouldn't get that severe feeling of exhaustion right away, even if the spacetime anomaly in Snezhnaya was more severe or intense than it was in the chasm. It might take time to sort of wear her down, but maybe it just doesn't take as long as it did in the chasm. And there's evidence for this because notice that the Traveler's chest in the teaser trailer is cryo blue. That means they've already been in Snezhnaya for at least a decent amount of time, plus the duration of the train ride to the capital, and we don't know where the capital is in relation to Snezhnaya's borders either. So it could be that the longer we stay in Snezhnaya, the worse Paimon's symptoms get. And who knows, maybe this becomes a plot point. But also worth noting, since we're talking about people falling asleep on trains, there were a bunch of people in the chat and comment section of my live stream analysis that noted that Paimon slowly falling asleep on the train reminded them a lot of how March 7th started feeling ill and fell asleep on the train during the journey to Amphorius in Honkai Star Rail. Now this could be a coincidence, but it is interesting that Amphorius was experiencing a spacetime anomaly as well, and it did have an indirect relationship to March that could have ended with someone freezing the entire timeline, slowing time all the way down until it doesn't move anymore. But while March was related to the time half of spacetime, Paimon might have had more of a relationship to the space half. After all, space and time define each other. And when you mess around with one, you mess around with the other, which would also support the idea that Paimon has another connection to Asmodee, and I'm gonna stop before people bring out the pitchforks again. Okay, that's really all I wanted to say about Paimon, but I do have two little related side thoughts to share before you go. Partly because I'm not used to really short theories like this, and I feel like I haven't really given you much to chew on. So, I guess I'm kind of compensating. Anyway, the first thing I wanted to share is that the idea of stasis and preservation isn't the only thing that the developers mentioned when they were talking about the special abilities of Cryo. They also mentioned how Cryo could be used to hide or seal an ancient forbidden concept or power from the world, which the Traveler might be able to tap into at some point. Now, this could be their way of talking about the stellar reactions that we're getting, but given how they also told us about how the stellar linchpins that make those reactions are connected to the third descender, it's actually possible that the power Cryo is hiding is related to that instead. Especially since the third descender allegedly died in Snezhnaya while unsealing a forbidden power, likely the Abyss, and the Cereeds has been collecting their remains. Which brings me to the second thing I wanted to talk about, which has to do with stellar linchpins and Cryo as well. So after watching Sandrone's teaser trailer, I couldn't help but notice how Sandrone looked at her Cryo stellar linchpin while talking about Paulownia, and how Paulownia is also gone. Which feels really weird to me because Paulownia is just a machine, right? And Sandrone's specialty is building and fixing machines, and she's modified him a bunch of times. And we know the bulk of Paulownia's body is still intact, if not a bit banged up, because we saw it. So there has to be some external reason as to why Paulownia doesn't work anymore and Sandrone can't fix him. And this made me wonder if the reason that she can't fix Paulownia is because Paulownia's ability to function is tied to the stellar linchpin. What if the second chance that Elaine left her was tied to both Paulownia and the linchpin inside of him, assuming that it was inside of him? Now, I know the linchpins are technically tied to the third descender, but the Narcissus and Kreutz Ordo Elaine was working with was also researching descenders and visions, so I don't think this idea is totally off the table. And if they did go that route, then it would be kind of symbolic in a lot of ways that I think work really well for her character, because Elaine made Paulownia because he couldn't stay at Sandrone's side, because, he's human and she's a robot. So if the stellar linchpin is connected to that action, then her awakening it or using it or obtaining it from Paulownia and Elaine is kind of symbolic of her inheriting their legacy. It would also be thematically appropriate because Sandrone and Paulownia in the Commedia dell'arte are technically husband and wife. So if Sandrone sort of spiritually carries a piece of Paulownia with her going forward in the form of a stellar linchpin legacy, since linchpins appear to be visions, and visions are desires and wishes and hopes and dreams and all that kind of stuff, and I think that applies to legacies as well, then you can argue that she actually underwent a chemical marriage with Paulownia, and the whole alchemical marriage thing is very much a Narcissus and Kreutz Ordo sort of dealio, and those are Marionette's origins. So I think that'd be pretty cool, if true. A lot of contingencies for that to be true, though. So we'll see, very soon, probably. Maybe this video won't age well at all, I don't know. Regardless, I would like to extend a huge thanks to all of my channel members for supporting me and all the nonsense that I make. And I will say that I am in the middle of cooking a really big honka theory, so I hope this tides you over until we get that thing finished. She's a bit of a beast, so I guess I'll just go work on that now. But while I do that, let me know your thoughts about what's coming in Snezhnaya, and also what you think is wrong with Paimon, because I'm sure there's more options than just what I've presented here. Whoever guesses right gets, bragging rights, I guess. So thanks for watching. I'll see you later. Bye.